And we're joined now by the pride of the Gold Coast, Megan Anderson, in advance of her fight against Cat Zingano at UFC 232. But Megan, before we talk about this fight and this night, I want to look back at your UFC debut. One of the more indelible memories for me from UFC 225 was watching you walk to the octagon for the first time. What were you thinking and feeling in the moments leading up to your UFC debut?
That walkout was seriously, like, it was one of the most amazing experiences. I remember I was standing in a tunnel because they kind of like get you positioned in the tunnel. They play all their footage, whatever they need to play, and they count you down to walk out. And I remember just looking up at the United Center in Chicago, and it literally looked that there were people from the floor to the sky and just looking, waiting for me, and that was legitimately one of the coolest experiences ever.
In the fight itself, things against Holly Holm didn't go your way. At what point did you realize, she may have the better of me tonight?
There wasn't really a point that I thought, oh, I'm going to lose this fight, because every round's like, it's a chance to, implement your game plan. Like, there's 3 rounds and every round starts standing. So, definitely didn't think I was out of the fight, but definitely after the fight had finished, I was like, I 100% gave that fight to her. Like, I wasn't able to do what I wanted. So it was more of like after the fight, but I never really counted myself out at any point.
What was your biggest takeaway from that fight against Holm?
Oh, well, Holly is a phenomenal athlete. I've never fought anyone like her before. She is physically strong. She has great movement. She's a very defensively sound fighter. She doesn't take a lot of risks. So it was really interesting fighting someone like her. But, I am my own worst critic. There are things that I did well in that fight, and there's obviously things that I can improve on. So we're trying to improve on them for this fight.
Speaking of this fight, you were coming off 4 straight wins, not just 4 straight wins, but 4 straight knockouts and 4 straight performances of the night. Bonuses, you take a loss to a former champ. What's it like bouncing back against someone with the pedigree and resume of Cat Zingano?
I'm not really very stressed or worried about it at all. Some of my biggest improvements have come from my losses. So expect a very different Megan coming into the cage this time. I'm just excited to showcase. I kind of feel like I've got a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I've got something to prove and some people to quieten down. So I'm excited to get mean out there.
So how will we know watching at UFC 232 that things are going according to plan?
Well, I guess me hitting Cat a lot. That would be a great sign. But I think you'll see a different intensity, and a lot more calculated, a lot more vicious, I guess you could say.
Cat does hold wins over 2 former bantamweight champions in Amanda Nunes and Miesha Tate. What does she do well that, if you aren't on your game, could give you problems?
Oh, definitely. She is a phenomenal athlete, and her will to win is strong, and so she's not going to back down. She comes to fight every single minute of the fight. So I definitely expect her to pressure a lot and to try to take me down. I definitely don't see her standing with me at all. There is a big height and reach advantage towards me. So she, as a smaller fighter, you don't kind of want to play to your opponent's strength. So I definitely see her trying to close the distance, but I think she'll have a hard time doing that.
And in her last fight against Marion Renault, she tied a bantamweight record with 6 takedowns. We saw Holly, she was able to take you down 4 times. How do you adjust and how do you prepare for someone, again, who we expect to try and change levels like Holly did in Cat when you guys meet at UFC 232?
I think the difference is Holly has great footwork. She sets herself up in really great positions to be able to get to where she wants to do, whereas Cat doesn't really have that footwork. Her movement is very random. Some could say it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I think it's going to be very different for her trying to close that range. And Marion Renault is, she's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, so she is going to want to try and take it to the ground. And she does have a good submission game off her back, so she wasn't really stopping a lot of those takedowns either.
Cat has a reputation as a bit of a slow starter, but with that also a reputation as a strong finisher. How, if at all, does that affect your game plan going into the fight?
It doesn't really affect it at all. I hit as hard in the third round as I do in the first. Like, I don't slow down. I keep that pace, and we're ready for a 15-minute war if we have to.
You're on the same card as Cyborg, Cris, and many people, myself included, are looking at the landscape of natural featherweights who someday could challenge her. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask a Cyborg question. You've been tied to her multiple times for events. How do you avoid looking forward to Cyborg when you're going to see her at the press events, and how do you stay focused on the task at hand, given the fact that you're on the same card as Cris?
Yeah, and funnily enough, we are managed by the same company now too, so that's an interesting dynamic. But to be honest, like, I'm not really concerned at all about that. I am solely focused on Cat, and if that happens afterwards, great, let's bring it on. But I can't look past Cat at 232 because it all depends on that fight.
And Cat did tell the MMA Hour that she expects that she could be called on as a replacement should something happen in that Cyborg Nunes fight. What have you been told, if anything, regarding your status against Cat should something with Cris and Amanda fall through?
Well, I haven't been told anything, so I don't know what's going to happen, but I really don't think either Amanda or Cris are going to have any issues, so I guess I hope Cat's ready.
You seem to be embracing being on this side of the microphone. We've seen you in the Aussie and fancy breakdowns. You did some in-cage reporting for Invicta as well. What sparked your interest in being the one holding the microphone at these events?
Well, so Laura, who normally does the in-cage interviews at Invicta, she had to fill in at UFC Milwaukee, so she wasn't going to be able to make the event. And Shannon Knapp, who is the president of Invicta, she has asked my coach to do it before James, but he was also going to be there because one of our teammates was fighting. So she asked me, she was like, hey, like, I've watched your guys's like Aussie and fancy, and I think you do a really good job. So like, would you like to fill in? I was like, yeah, definitely, something that I think is a great experience. And I think it would be something that I maybe would be interested in doing down the line. It being a former Invicta fighter and former champion, I feel like I kind of understand where every single one of those athletes have been in their career. So I think I kind of bring a unique perspective to it.
All right, with that unique perspective, we're going to ask you to play analyst for us quickly for UFC 232. Megan Anderson beats Cat Zingano if?
I don't know.
What's the key to Megan Anderson beating Cat Zingano?
Okay. Range, keeping range, stop the takedown, and controlled violence.
What's the key to Cat Zingano beating Megan Anderson?
Close the range, takedown, and top pressure.
Maybe it'd be easier if it were a fight you weren't directly involved in. So we'll look at the co-main event. Cyborg hasn't lost since 2005. Amanda Nunes upsets Cyborg if what?
Amanda Nunes wins if she can make Cris respect her power. I think that is what a lot of people have struggled to do, particularly in a lot of Chris's recent fights. So if Cris can respect Amanda's power, her pressure won't be able to be there like she normally does, like she did in the Yana Kunitskaya fight, like she did in the Holly fight. I think if I honestly think if Amanda can level change and mix it up, and she starts initiating the up-down cardio, I think that will tire Cris out as well.
See, it's so much more comfortable when you're not the one directly involved in it.
I know.
One for the road, and this one might be the easiest one. Cyborg beats Amanda Nunes if what?
Cyborg beats Amanda Nunes if she can pressure and back her up against the cage. I think Amanda has had trouble with pressure fighters before, and I think if Cris can close that range and like make her on the back foot from the start, I think Amanda gets a little flustered, and I actually kind of see Cris maybe trying to take her down.
Megan Anderson, pride of the Gold Coast, taking on Cat Zingano, UFC 232, December 29th in Vegas, Sunday midday, December 30th back home in Australia. Megan, thanks so much. We look forward to seeing you fight in Vegas.
Thank you, guys.